What's up, y'all? Will here at Schedulefly. Another awesome episode. This is with John Pierce, and we had such a great conversation. He, in a very short period of time, he and his wife and his business partners have built just an incredible array of businesses, sort of in the outer lying towns around Raleigh, North Carolina, Apex, Cary, Holly Springs, and several others. And this is impressive how much they've done in this short period of time. But, you know, we talked a lot about being an entrepreneur, building a business, delegating, and culture. And he and his team have built such a great culture. It is so clear, and it's so, you can just tell how genuine and authentic his passion for what he does is, and how sharp he is. And in addition to that, I will add that you'll hear us talking about a specific burger that my stepmom, who lives in Cary, loves and had been raving about, and I got to enjoy that exact burger that night with her, and I will throw me into the mix. It's fantastic. So you can hear us talking about that. But this is an awesome episode. We will get you right onto it. But first, a word from our sponsor, Pop Menu. Pop Menu is a partner of us, or partner of ours here at Schedulefly, and a great partner, and we're very proud to have that partnership. Pop Menu is all about making your day easier and your sales bigger. They will simplify your marketing operations, bring in more guests, and capture customer data for personalized remarketing to keep them coming back. With one super simple to use platform that integrates with most point of sale systems like Toast and Square and a number of others. Pop Menu starts with a beautifully designed, easy to update, interactive menu that transforms the guest experience online. It includes brand new website for you that's optimized for search engines like Google for no additional cost. Automated digital marketing, online ordering and wait listing, and you'll never miss another call with their AI answering solution. They've answered over 1 million calls for customers with that already. So, and there's so much more. So I will say that we have a lot of mutual customers at Schedulefly with Pop Menu, and I've spoken to those customers, many of them, and they're all very happy with Pop Menu and very glad that they use the service, and just they all rave about it. So check out Pop Menu, mention Schedulefly, mention the Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast, and there's a link to the show in the show notes here for Pop Menu. So check them out, and you'll get a discount on your photography through mentioning Schedulefly. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for taking your time out of your day to check out our podcast. If you're on Spotify, please follow us. If you're on iTunes, please give us a rating. The more of those ratings and follows that we get, the more the algorithms put this in front of people that are looking for good content about owning and running a successful restaurant. Here we go. John Pierce. Cool. We are live, and this is a very special opportunity here in Apex, North Carolina at Tap Station. John, introduce yourself.
Hey, my name is John Pierce. I have restaurants mostly south of Raleigh, basically Fuquay, Apex, Holly Springs, and Cary.
So I was up in Beach Mountain this
Mm-hmm.
weekend, and I had emailed you about whether you might want to be on our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And you responded saying that you've listened to a lot of the episodes and always got value out of it. Dude, I can't tell you the smile on my face. I showed my whole family. I'm like, look, y'all, like, he listens, and it's just it's great to. It's just we want to create good content that will help people. So I'm glad. I mean, here you are. You've built a really amazing business, clearly, and we'll get into all that. But you're also listening to others, which says a lot, because you're learning from experience and then learning from other people and probably getting ideas and things like that as well. So thank you for being a listener.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for putting together good content.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning, man. How did you get the hospitality bug?
I think my story starts a lot like other restaurateurs, where it started as a busboy and dishwasher at I think I was 14 or 15, and I grew up in the mountains in Bryson City, and there was a restaurant attached to the Nana Hill Outdoor Center called Relia's Garden, and it was kind of more fine dining. It was probably the most fine dining in our area, and I got to see food that I had never seen before, and got to see scallops and stuff like that I hadn't really grown up with, and so I started really just bussing tables and working during the summer there, and I went to NC State. Halfway through my freshman year, I changed my major from engineering to entrepreneurship through the college management, because I knew I wanted to go into business for myself, whatever that ended up being. And I actually tried to leave the restaurant industry several times. It just kind of kept calling me back, and I would go back and cook in that restaurant, manage in the front of house a little bit, and I learned that I really liked all aspects of that business. And I think one of the things I love the most is that it was the cream rises to the top in restaurants. If you work really hard, typically it pays off. And so I kind of just stuck with it and worked my way through restaurants in college. And out of college, I got a job at Ruckus, actually, which I think is where we met the first time, back in 2011.
Wow, Ruckus Pizza, right? Yeah.
And I was working for them for a couple of years. Helped.
Oh, wow.
Got to see a restaurant opening. I also got to work. I was working at Coquette, and for those guys, I was serving, and got to sort of see how they opened a restaurant. I got to see how the Ruckus folks opened restaurants, and really, it wasn't until I got married that I had the confidence to do it on my own. My wife is an engineer by trade, and naturally not a risk taker per se, and she grew up in like a military family and always had kind of some consistency. And entrepreneurship I thought was just normal because my dad was an entrepreneur, and in small towns I feel like more of your friends' parents had businesses or whatever, and
right.
That was kind of my story. Well, it wasn't necessarily hers, and we got married and I had left the industry. I was doing sales, and on our honeymoon on our way back, I remember asking her, hey, do you want to open a restaurant with me? And instead of saying no, which is kind of what I expected, to be honest, and she just said, well, let's get through one life change at a time, but let's talk about it. And that was in October, and by November that year, we were writing a business plan together, and by January, we had our first investors, or friends, family, and fools jumping on board, and the following January, we opened in 2015.
So 2015. Okay, so 2014, you were married, and
we got married in 2013 October, and kind of all through 14 worked on business plan. And I was 24 years old asking banks for money, and that didn't.
Well, I was going to say, because you're a young guy, so I figured you must have been pretty young when you started. Okay.
Yeah, we went through. I tell the story. We went through 23 banks before the 24th said yes, and got my brother-in-law and sister to co-sign the loan with us and partner with us, and we wouldn't be where we are without that. And a bunch of friends and family put some cash in to help us get started, and
So friends and family and fools, as you said, that was funny. Well, they've done well, I bet. And then you got so you went through that many banks. Was your business plan getting better with each no, or was it just that you needed the right bank to?
I think it's always easy after you go through hard times to be like, I really needed to go through that. And I think I needed to be told no to know if it was a dream worth having. And a lot of times when you get rejection and whatever it is, if it doesn't bother you the next day, then it probably wasn't worth having to begin with. And I think just having some of that rejection every time we got a no from a bank, we got a yes from somebody that knew us and that knew our work ethic and whatever. And so like it always kind of felt like we were still supposed to do it, like we were still called to do it. And we'd get a big no from a bank that had kind of drug us along, and then a family member or a friend would reach out and say, hey, thanks for sending your business plan. We want to put, $5,000 in, or we want to put 20 or whatever it was. And that would just kind of fuel us through to the next one. But I think our business plan improved. Even looking back, and it sounds a little arrogant, but I think it was pretty good to begin with. I mean, there's definitely things that I thought I would do that I haven't done, or like my marketing plan. I love to look back at that because I think I did one of those things, but once you get open, it's just you're too busy to even think about some of that stuff. But NC State, that my whole senior year I was writing a business plan. It wasn't for that, but I went through that process, and so I was pretty comfortable with that piece. It was more just a 24-year-old asking a bank for money with nothing but debt in my name at that point. Like, all I had was a mortgage, and I was leaving my income. I was leaving my job to open this restaurant. It's the riskiest business in the world. So I wasn't surprised when we got no's. It took a while to get off the ground.
Kudos for sticking with it. That's
Thanks.
a lot of no's.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't take the hint.
How much did you raise total?
So from investors, including some money that, like, when we got married, we both had a house and sold one of them and stuff, and so we had some cash saved up from that. We saved $150, and then we went to the bank using that kind of as down payment, and yeah.
Okay. And which was the first location?
So we opened Holly Springs. Sunday was 8 years.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. So, we opened that next to the Target in a shopping center. So part of the reason why we were getting all these no's early on is that we were trying to open a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot restaurant, and it was going to cost $800,000 or $900,000 to start from a vanilla shell, and this deli happened to close, and I sent them a message on their website and said, "Hey, I'm so sorry you're closing, but I know you still have a lease. Are you trying to find somebody to take that over for you, or whatever?" And they were, and they hadn't gone to market yet or anything, and so we made them an offer, and literally a couple of days later, we were in the space. We had the space, and so that saved us quite a lot on the capital end, because the hood was already there. The structure was already there, and we got to do a lot of cosmetic stuff and put a bar in and everything, but definitely made the first one possible. And then we had a ton of success early on there. Holly Springs at the time the population had outgrown its retail, and so
that's Mason Jar.
Yeah, that's Mason Jar Tavern. So that's our first concept, and then we decided to open another one nearby in Fuquay Arena. So of the same concept, we went into this really cool old building. It had been restaurants before. We're coming up on 6 years there, or almost 7 years actually, and that location has this, really cool brick old building. It's on a corner in the middle of downtown, and we really just kind of fell in love with being in small downtown. So after that, all of our locations are kind of attached to the small downtown. And we sort of changed our model to being, going into small downtowns and making as big of a difference as we can in the food scene, but also being involved in the community and stuff. And we really fell in love with that community. Fast forward, I guess a little over a year after opening that, we had the opportunity to buy a brewery that was closing a mile down the road on the Varina side of Fuquay Arena. There's two small downtowns kind of incorporated together.
Yeah.
And so we did, and we had wanted to open a brewery focusing on all lagers, really because at the time, even though the craft beer scene in the area was kind of saturated, it was missing this niche. And so we opened a 100% lager-only brewery, with a big tap room, huge outdoor space, really fun environment. And then we had an opportunity to go into a building down here in Apex that I had wanted forever, and had my eyes set on that location for a long time. We had just opened the brewery, so we weren't in a position to take that on ourselves. And during that whole time, I had met this couple that were from St. Thomas. They had 12 restaurants down there, and they were actually moving to North Carolina to raise their family. They had 3 kids. At that time, they were all under the age of 6 or 7. And she was actually pregnant with her third. Zika virus was an issue there, so she had already kind of moved
St. Thomas, here. Like the
islands, yeah.
Wow,
and
okay.
so they like had this, this business, and they decided to, to sell to their partners and to move up here. And he and I had met through mutual friends. They have some family up here, and we had just been talking about restaurants and really kind of hit it off. And so this location to open where Scratch is now became open, and I couldn't do it on my own. And so I reached out and I said, hey, let's go look at this place together. And we basically made an offer together and became partners at that point. Didn't even have a concept in mind when we did that. We just had to snatch that space up, and that's where Scratch was born. And since then, that partnership has grown. We have 2 other locations.
Okay. So, and why Scratch versus, like, why not take what you had over in Holly Springs, and like, why not Mason Jar? Just because it was is it so close geographically, or?
It is kind of close. Honestly, I think the building kind of needed, at where Scratch is, it needed a unique concept to be in there. It needed like its own thing. It's this historic building. It's called the Tobacco Mule Exchange Building, and it has a lot of history in this town. It's got these old wood columns and, you know, really old brick and original hardwood floors. Like it's a really cool building, and we honestly felt like Mason Jar would have done great down here in Apex, but we really felt like we needed to come up with a concept together as a partnership as well.
Yeah. Okay.
And so now it's all, you know, the partnership includes everything, but at that time this was the first time I was working with anybody that was active in the company. So like all of our friends and investors are really great sounding boards, and they helped me make decisions and stuff. But, you know, I was the one that was in the stores every day. And so bringing on a partner, you know, we just decided we'd come up with something together and let the creativity go. And that's where Scratch came to be. Yeah, and we're sitting in, so then we opened Scratch and Cary. That location's done really well for us. And before we started doing that, my partner bought this property that we're sitting in now, at Tap Station. There was a historic old gas station, and it was on the historic registry. He basically, the weekend we were opening Scratch in Apex, I was on Expo, and I was getting my butt kicked, and he walked in and had just come in, and I think he was relieving me or whatever, and he was like, "Hey, we got to think about what we could do with that old gas station." That it was kind of still in operation, but not really, and it wasn't a gas station. It was just like a place people would get their cars fixed or whatever. And it's like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "I drive by it every day, and it would be so cool as something, you know, social. Like, it feels like it should be the center of town." And the next thing I know, he had found the people and sent Facebook messages and made an offer and bought the property, and then came to me. I was like, "Hey, what are we going to do with this property now?" And so we built a 2-story rooftop brewery and bar.
So you added on the second.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what was a 2-story gas station? Like, well, okay. So you added this on up here. How many square feet is this place?
Including the kitchen and the brewery, it's like 7,500.
That's big.
And that includes the outside, like the upstairs outside space.
How many do you seat here?
So we can seat around 400.
Okay.
Yeah, there's times where there's more than that here. Like, I mean, you can imagine we opened the end of April in 2022, and which is like the worst time to open a mostly outdoor restaurant because you just get slammed all at once. But yeah, when we opened it, I mean, it was just packed, which is great. But you can definitely pack some people in here, and it's a good vibe, drinking beers, hanging out.
This is a lot to do in a short amount of time, man. I mean, I've followed from afar. Thank you for the business, by the way, since you're a customer. Yeah. I've followed from afar, and I keep seeing new places come in. So, I mean, you even went from your first to your second within like a year?
I think it was, like 18 months. Yeah.
So, I mean, that tells me you must have had, a really good process and team in place there to be able to that quickly turn to start looking for something else.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was putting myself in a lot of jobs early on, and the goal was always to have more than one location. I think I learned kind of the hard way how to delegate. And I didn't do a very good job of that when we opened the second one.
What do you mean?
I was just trying to run both of them at the same time. And
so you just had to delegate.
Yeah. And now, you know, I still wish I was better at it, but we had an awesome team, and we have a really great team right now, which is allowing us to keep growing. But you know, if I could go back and change anything about those early days when we opened the second restaurant, I think I would have done a better job of putting people in place and empowering them more instead of me trying to keep control.
Yeah. That's such a big part of, I mean, particularly for growth, there's just no other way around it. You got to figure out how to delegate. But then most people that start businesses restaurants or any kind of business like that, like you want to control it because you know what needs to be done and how it needs to be done and how it can be done right, and nobody's ever going to do it just like you, and that's the part of, I guess, letting go and knowing that maybe not, but then they also bring their own ideas a lot of times that you wouldn't have thought of, and so you probably you just have to get better at that to grow.
Yeah, I've learned that my idea isn't the only good one, and so I think my train of thought on like coming up with concepts and stuff, it used to be like I can't let anybody know about my idea until it's like in place and fully formed because somebody might take it or whatever, and that is just a really immature way, in my opinion, of thinking about it, because the more people that I passionately explain it to, the more the world can kind of influence it in a positive way. And there's certain things like, you stay guarded on, but for the most part, like, other people have better ideas than I have, and if they're willing to talk through it and brainstorm and stuff. So now when we come up with concepts, we really like to talk about it in just a few of us, and then start to talk about it to the people, like, to our chef and to our other managers, and like, they may say, well, that doesn't sound like a good idea, and to us it may be a great idea, but then when they explain why, we get into some, like, real decision making at that point.
So you've really one of the cool things about a growing organization like yours, because you mentioned you have a great team, and I want to ask you about that and how you get how you attract and keep good people, especially over the last couple of years. But
I haven't figured that out. So
it's hard.
I have good people, but keeping them, I feel like, is still difficult no matter what we do. Yeah.
I mean, the good thing about growing is that you can empower people to grow with you and to accept new responsibilities and take on new roles, which is a good thing, because your best people are all, your best people are probably looking to do that. And if they can't find it here, they'll find it somewhere, or they'll start their own or whatever. But, well, let's talk about, it was like all anybody would talk about, maybe a year ago when I would do this. It's just like, I can't get anybody to work. We're not even able to open every day because we just literally can't find enough people to come work. That seems to be softening a little bit, but it still is a big challenge. I know. What's been going on with y'all?
I definitely think it's getting better. I think at the end of last summer it was getting better for sure. For a long time, all of us were just throwing money at the problem. We were just offering more. And that, to an extent, was working. But if every restaurant is doing the same thing, then, we were having a really hard time being competitive. And I think the reason is a ton of people left the industry. They went and did other jobs during COVID and stuff like that. And COVID just made everybody kind of take a step back and reassess what they want to be doing. And I think we lost, especially in the kitchen, I think we lost a good bit of our job pool. And so we've tried to be as competitive as possible, but our focus in any of that is making the right culture. I think, we paid really well in general, but we found that just throwing more money at that problem isn't as good as making it a fun place to work, and isn't as good as just making it enjoyable when people come in, and putting systems in place to where they know what they're walking into, every day. And for a while there, most restaurants, including ours, every day was, you didn't know what you were walking into, because you didn't know if somebody didn't show up, and if you'd be understaffed or not. And so there's some anxiety just kind of with all restaurant employees, kind of under the surface. And I think we're through that for the most part. We could still use 100 more people, but
how many people do you have total at all your locations?
I think we're around 400. Okay. We have a lot of, like, part-time, especially at Tap Station. Like, we have a ton of, like, high school age kids that are helping us run food and bus tables and stuff like that. And at our bigger, like at Mason Jar and Fuquay, we have a good bit of like 16 to 18, 19-year-olds as well that they work 1 or 2 shifts a week, and we're totally fine with that, because they work 1 or 2 shifts a week and they show up. And pre-COVID we had similar numbers though, and we had 2 fewer restaurants, and so we're still working to get back to that. And we've had to change processes and stuff just to work with fewer people. But
is it mainly back of the house?
Yeah, I mean, we have such a great, like right now, if you'd asked me a few months ago, it would have been a different answer. We have such a great core group at all of our restaurants now, and that changes everything because when you bring new people in, they're getting trained right, and they're getting the tools that they need and stuff. When you don't have that core and you don't have the culture right, then it just becomes a revolving door, and we've, just like every restaurant, kind of had to refigure out how we're hiring and training and staffing and all that kind of stuff. So.
This is going to be an interesting question. So my daughter is taking a semester off. She's a freshman at college,
okay.
And she's at Penn State.
Nice.
She's doing online classes at home, and right now, so she's actually going to interview for a restaurant job, like tomorrow, I think. I had a conversation with her. My wife had a conversation with her. My wife used to wait tables back in the day. What advice would you give to somebody that's going in who has not worked, but she's been around with Schedule Fly and me doing the podcast enough to be like, okay, well, restaurants sound like they'd be fun. Like, what kinds of things do you ask people that come in for their first interview? Somebody that's 18 years old, hasn't worked before. What are you looking for?
Yeah, so I guess most of the time I'm looking for somebody that is active in general. Somebody that, if they've never had a job before, did they play sports or did they, did they do something? Or are they used to having, kind of a easier lifestyle or whatever?
Yeah.
So I'm looking for work ethic, like something that would demonstrate that. So a lot of times, I'll ask about what their hobbies are, and sometimes somebody's hobbies can be work in some ways, and so I like to ask that question. And just more with that age group, I'm looking for a personality.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about bring your personality to work, and there are like some corporate environments in restaurants where you get a script that you go over at every table and stuff like that, and you have to hide tattoos, which I think is probably not the case anymore anywhere, but it used to be you'd have to hide your tattoos and do all that kind of stuff, and for us it's within reason we want you to bring your personality to work. And so when I'm sitting down with people, I'm asking questions that would show me, do they have a personality to talk to people? Like I'm naturally not an extroverted person, but when I'm on the floor I am, and
right.
Can you turn that on? And so I'll ask questions about what they do outside of school, what their favorite subjects are, stuff like that, and it's more just to have a conversation because that's what they're going to be doing with their tables in general. And then, I used to ask the question a lot. I don't do a ton of interviews with, like I interview a lot of managers and stuff now, but I don't do a ton, except when we're opening a place. But I used to ask, like, is there a place in your life that is unorganized and there a place in your life that's clean, or is it all disorganized, all clean or whatever? And a lot of high school kids will tell you, like, well, my car is super dirty, but my room is really clean, or my locker at school or whatever. And that question I'm always kind of looking for, can they take pride in something being organized and clean, and like, because restaurants need to be organized and clean, and or are they in general just a more messy person? And that doesn't mean I wouldn't hire them. It just means that there's something that I'm going to be thinking about.
Yes.
When I'm training them, there's going to be certain things. And
what a great question.
Yeah, it's kind of it throws some people, and I really ask those more to server or people that are at like 18, 19 trying to be a server than like a food runner. I might not ask that question because sometimes it make them feel uncomfortable or whatever. And most of the time, especially in the last 2 years with staffing being so difficult, to be honest, it's more like they're interviewing us in some ways, and I'll even start some conversations out that way. Like, you could go across the street and find a job, you could walk a block down the road and find a different job. Like, so why do you want to work here over there? And then let me tell you why I think you should. And if I find somebody that has that personality that fits our culture and all that kind of stuff, then really that's more the conversation that I'm having, I feel like, nowadays, which is totally different than 5 years ago or even 4 years ago.
Yeah. I like that question. That's a really interesting question. I wrote this blog post years ago. Well, it was 5 years ago. And it was why I hope all of my kids will work in independent restaurants one day.
Yeah, I love that.
And I'll send you a copy of it. I printed it out. I actually printed it out like literally right before I left today. I printed it out and I said, "Well, I want you to read this and let's talk." I think she's going in tomorrow. I was like, "Let's just talk tonight." But it said my kids are 13 and whatever ages they were. So she was 13. She's 18 now. But I talked a lot about how I have a tremendous amount of respect for you and all of the people that work with and for you for what you do, because it's part of the reason I've always loved doing this podcast. I could never get tired of it because like I listen to y'all's stories. I watch, I go to restaurants, I go see all that happens. I hear the stories of what happens off hours at 2 a.m. I mean, just to me, it's amazing how much love and passion goes into these businesses and the amount of community. It's always this like focus on everybody else. It's focused on like taking good care of customers, taking good care of our employees, taking good care of our communities. And meanwhile, you just have nonstop, like metaphorical, if you will, fires to put out, or literal ones, or whatever. But
sometimes,
like, like things going out, somebody quitting last minute, and then you throw all that. Like that's just been always a case. Then you got, and then you've got like this like for decades now. You've had like abusive chefs, you've had substance abuse issues that are part of the industry that the industry's trying to work through, just so much. And then COVID hits and it's like, good grief, like it's just like one thing after another, and yet y'all show up every day and make people feel welcome and make people feel warm and make people feel like, I sit in this building and I imagine living here in Apex and being like you said, like center of town, like what a great place to go to celebrate, to mourn, to just clang glasses with your friends that you haven't seen in a while, and then for you to be able to orchestrate this like symphony of all the things that have to happen to go right, because there's so many things that have to go right for it all to work, and like one little thing can go wrong and then there's a bad experience, bad Yelp review, and then cascading problems and all that. So I've had always a lot of respect for what y'all do, and I wrote the post because I felt like I don't know if any of my kids will ever want to work in restaurants or own restaurants in perpetuity, but I feel like it's one place where you can go. You will learn so much so quickly about dealing with people, dealing with coworkers, dealing with the public, being a part of something that's bigger than yourself, trying to make other people, like separating yourself, almost like the messy room thing, like separating your problems that you're dealing with, which we all have problems, like putting that aside so that you can lock in on the people around you and compartmentalizing that. Like these are all like sales skills, looking people in the eyes, being able to carry on conversations with people that are not a script. Like, then that's why I said I wanted to work in independent restaurants, because for things like that, like I don't want, like learning to think on your feet, learning to deal with like, holy crap, we are getting crushed right now. I can't lose my SHIT. I got to like keep it together. And like these skill sets are so freaking transferable to any career. And in fact, if you can do really well in a fast-paced environment like this, like there's not really anything else you're going to do where you're like, God, I feel like I'm in a restaurant right now. Like almost every other job is like, not going to be quite as intense, and for such a short period of time on the daily as doing this. And so I think it's a wonderful opportunity to learn skills you'll take anywhere. And the particular part about the independent restaurants is you're going to be working for somebody who this is their dream, this is their baby. So you're going to want to learn to nourish and take care of somebody else's prized possession, something they have poured their whole life and bank account and soul into, and that's a special thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I go back and forth. So we have 2 daughters, and 5 and 2, so they got a long time before they're applying for
it happens fast, bro. It happens really fast.
And my wife and I kind of have talked a little bit about will they work in the restaurants and not. And one of the things that I most appreciate seeing when, we hire a newer high school kid or whatever, like just the thought of cleaning up somebody else's mess is not really something people like that our kids are being taught right now. Like the humility of clearing somebody else's table or cleaning a bathroom or, doing any of those. And it's gotten harder and harder to get staff to do some of these things. But like just learning that skill of putting other people first, like that's a life skill that I wish we were teaching more. And I think one of the reasons why I ended up staying in restaurants is really kind of what you were hitting on. Like school teaches, and school is valuable. Don't get me wrong, but school teaches people how to be an employee.
Agree.
And restaurants, I feel like, taught me how to be an employee. Like I got to have my own section, and that was my business. And I wanted those people to come back the next day. And we talk about that a lot specifically with our bartenders. Like you're running your own business. I'm just like giving you the inventory and the space. And
love that.
And
love
so
that.
I think those like skill sets like you're talking about, and if your daughter works for an independent restaurant, like they're also going to see the restaurateur's flaws. Like, if you work for a corporate place, most of those flaws have been kind of fleshed out, and there's a handbook for everything, and there's, all this, and there's positives to that for sure, and we're working towards that. But our staff get to see where I screw up. Like they get to see where I make mistakes, and it's important for us to ask for their feedback and their thoughts. And like when we're trying to build sales on a certain day, like it doesn't help if it's just us talking about it if we're not involving staff. And so working for an independent restaurant, you get to actually like your voice gets to be heard more if you're working in a good one, I think. And being able to actually see how those kind of things can, start to snowball, like getting to be involved in that, I feel like is really special for especially, a 18, 19-year-old. But you really do learn how to be an entrepreneur, I think, or to actually think and process problems and solve problems on the fly. But you're right, like dealing with the stress of a busy Friday night will teach you how to handle your brain when stressful life things come up.
Yes.
And, you're less quick to make rash decisions and things like that. Like you kind of have trained yourself to be a little bit numb to that, I think in a positive way to an extent, where when stressful things come up outside of work or whatever, you can think about them outside of your involvement in that situation, because that's how restaurants are. Like, there's going to be a problem every day.
Yeah.
And it just is, and how you deal with it is the key.
So you were in engineering school.
Sort of. I went to NC State thinking maybe I'll be an engineer. I liked math or whatever, and within like a week I was like, I'm not going to do that. But I went to State, not really because of engineering, just that's where I got in, and I got a scholarship and stuff. And so I went to they have like a first year college program or whatever, and through that you have to go through a class where it teaches you all about different possible majors, and one of those was business, and I found out entrepreneurship was a concentration. And at the time it was kind of like not making a decision. Like I made a decision that I wanted to not decide what I wanted to do the rest of my life.
Right.
But I wanted to own my own business someday, whether that was my primary job or a rental company on the side or whatever it was.
Yeah. And your wife is an engineer.
Yeah, she designed like drinking water treatment systems, and for a company just outside of Raleigh called Hazen and Sawyer, and she worked there for a good while until we had our kids.
Is she real involved with like when you guys are building out and designing?
Yeah, definitely. Before we had kids, she was able to be more. She still is.
How old are your kids? You said
5 and 2.
5.
Yeah.
Oh man! Congrats, dude.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
But yeah, she helps with like we have an event room at our brewery and at the restaurant in Fuquay, and so she does all the booking for that. And if we do caterings and stuff, she's involved in that kind of stuff. And we keep her busy.
So y'all own this building.
Yeah.
How many of the buildings do you own?
So this is the only one we're in the process. We're going to be moving our brewery, and we just bought a building for that. But this is the only one that we're actively in that we own.
Okay.
We lease all the others. I think our long-term goal is to own more dirt that we're involved in, but I don't think that'll keep us from opening a place if it's a good location and all that, and we can get a good lease for it and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, this one, like I said, my partner bought it when it was still an active like service station, and we tore down all but 1 or 3 walls and then kept historic status of the building. And yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I always wonder about that, owning versus leasing. It just pros and cons of both, I guess, but sure helps with when leases are going up and food costs are going up. And
yeah, well, it's it's putting money in a savings account essentially that in 20 years is paid off, and you have an asset. Whereas most restaurants, if they last 20 years, that's awesome, but you're not really left with anything tangible
right
at the end there. And so for a lot of restaurant owners, the retirement plan is the dirt, and it's a pretty good one if you're in the right location and in a demographic that's growing and all that kind of stuff.
Where are you moving your brewery?
So we bought the building in front of our brewery. It's an old hardware store. This huge warehouse, but it's on Broad Street. We're kind of a block off Broad Street now, and downtown Varina. And we're going to open a restaurant there and do some cool stuff in that building. But that's a few years out. It's a pretty daunting project right now.
Have you had to raise any additional money over the years, or have all the businesses just funded itself?
They mostly funded themselves. We haven't we've partnered with Jeff and Meredith, their husband and wife team that we own Scratch and now Mason Jar and Tap Station with. But we haven't had, we've been able to kind of bootstrap, and we have a great relationship with the bank now when we need to. And it's definitely easy. Those conversations are much easier now than they were 8 years ago.
What was the bank that finally took you up on the deal?
So, it's kind of crazy. I hired a loan consultant, and he found a bank out of Atlanta that and this lady spent tons and tons of time with me and it was a tiny loan for what she did for a living, but it was an SBA backed loan at the time, and it was kind of wild. We since moved it to our primary bank here in Fuquay Fidelity Bank, but I never met them or anything. It was just kind of worked out. But I ended up hiring somebody to try to figure out how to not get so many no's. And he got a few no's for me too, so it wasn't just that. Yeah.
I've never heard of a loan. That's interesting. Huh. So you got 2 little kids. So you're finding a good amount of balance between all of this operations and growth and having time with family?
Yeah, I mean, some weeks are harder than others, and my family is really great at understanding that we're in the restaurant business, and so there's some nights where we're sitting down at dinner and I get a call that I need to go fix a hood system or something, and I'm gone for the rest of the night or whatever, and that just is what it is, and that they're really supportive in that, and that helps. But yeah, for the most part, I get to see my kids 3 or 4 evenings a week, and get to have breakfast with them a lot and spend Sundays together, and I spend a lot of times in and out of meetings with our managers and less running shifts per se than I used to, which is good.
What do you do to stay mentally, physically fit, healthy, sane?
So I do work out. I joined CrossFit actually during COVID because I was not staying sane. You go from working just like everybody else. You go from working 6 or 7 days a week to having to lay off 350 people and sitting around. And we rebuilt half of Holly Springs, put booths in and stuff, and kept ourselves busy. But started going to the gym then, which was good. I read a good bit, part of local church, and try to have life outside of work as well.
What kind of stuff do you read?
Mostly business stuff. I listen to a lot of Audible and a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
I kind of bounce between podcasts about beer and audibles about business and kind of back and forth. So,
what are some of the good Audible business books that you've?
I just finished What Got You Here Won't Get You There. I really enjoyed that one. It's a lot about. So I do a lot of focus on like interpersonal communication, just because that's my primary job, and like problem solving, but talking to people in a way that solves the problem. And that one got really deep into like how successful people don't get to the next level because they're not changing the way that they're communicating.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Yeah, and that one I really enjoyed. I actually want to go back and re-listen to it because I feel like, I have from Fuquay to Cary, I have a 35-minute drive, and from Fuquay to Apex, I have a 25-minute drive, or 20-minute drive, and so I have a lot of time, but it doesn't always coincide with when the chapter ends or whatever, and
right.
so I'm like in a thought, and or I get a call or whatever, so I need to put some more time into actually going back and re-listening to that one. But I really like that one. I listen to some classics often, like How to Win Friends and Influence People and those books. But the Chick-fil-A, it's my pleasure book. I really like that one. And
what is it?
It's called It's My Pleasure. It's the CFO of Chick-fil-A wrote it. I believe the CFO.
Oh yeah.
One of the takeaways, I read it pre-COVID, and we actually had all of our managers read it back in, like, I think 2018 or 19. And we had them kind of like digest it. And we talked about it once a week at our management meetings. And then COVID happened, and I went back and reread it recently. And it talks a lot about like when it's okay to let people go and how that affects your culture. And like that chapter, for whatever reason, we just had good timing because we had to let somebody go. And it just really was fitting for when I was reading it. But that's a really good one for anyone in the industry needs to read that book for sure.
It's my pleasure. So that was last summer. My son had his first job, and his first summer job
in restaurants.
And it was at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, nice.
Because he was 15, and so he could, and I was like, man, look, because I just hear so many people that, like, I had a buddy that, I don't know, his business probably had like 30 or 40 people working for him. He's like, man, I have like 5 or 6 people that, happen to have Chick-fil-A on their resume. Yeah. And he's like, it's a, it's a good place. And of course, this is a customer. You're always just admiring, like, just how they're able to process so much so quickly. And then but then you look at how many people are there versus like every other fast food place. And it's, it's very clear that, so he worked there last summer, and I mean, he's a 15-year-old boy, so he's not going to get real deep about what he got from it, but I know what he got from it, and
well, it's crazy because they're not the highest paid, like, even fast food workers necessarily, but they're the happiest by far. And that's one of the things, like, you have to, in my industry, when you see something like that, you have to say, well, we need to figure out why that is, because, like, our business isn't going to be the same as Chick-fil-A. Like, we have bars and stuff like that, and it's just different. But the culture that they really focus on, like, they spend so much time and energy on making the place feel just like it does for the customers as it does for the staff. And that's pretty unique in our industry, because usually staff get treated one way and customers get treated like red carpet, and like they're walking on red carpet. And I feel like that's a problem in our industry, is that we treat our staff less than our customers, and we should be treating them the same. And they do such a good job of that it's good for us to study that, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I feel like the industry's it's definitely moving in that direction. I mean, there was years, where just like you'd have, I mean, it was just toxic, especially in the back, and but there's been a lot of good work in this industry with changing that culture. There's been a lot of work with, organizations like Ben's Friends that are helping with people with substance abuse, and that's been such a big thing. I mean, it used to be like the restaurant culture was like, work hard, play hard, like everybody busts their tails all night, and they go out and just party hard together, and that's changing. And then I've had people say not that it's a bad thing that it's changing, but then it's becoming a little harder to, or you have to find different ways to create that sort of like family culture that you would get when you would kind of do the work hard, play hard. Mm-hmm. Like you've got to find different ways to, because that would create this bonding,
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. It's really true. When we opened, that culture had kind of already shifted somewhat.
Yeah.
And there's definitely like cliques in all of our restaurants that they go out and they spend time together outside of work. And I mean, we've had people that have met at our restaurants that have gotten married, and that's happened several times. And like, there's definitely a family environment. But you're right. Like, if a Chick-fil-A model works, then clearly you don't need to all go get wasted every night together, because that's not what they're doing. So there's something to be said for kind of analyzing what's going on there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What's so labor's gone up, food costs have gone up. It seems like everything's going up. You guys are you seeing any of that starting to soften, or people are still out spending? Everywhere I go, I see packed restaurants all the time now. What do you think about the next year?
I guess what I'm seeing in general, and in December it changed. Coming up on it was probably I think it was our best December we've had ever, maybe, which was really great to see. Prior to that, I was noticing that weekends were busier than they used to be, and weekdays were slower than they used to be. And so, what I'm thinking is that, and this is totally a guess, and I'm sure there's somebody out there studying this that is way smarter than I am, but I think that the economy, like, even if the economy isn't, going into a recession or whatever, the perception of that makes people spend differently. And so I think people are still going out. Thankfully, they're still choosing to come to our restaurants, and not to say the weekdays are slow, but I think a lot of it is being funneled on the weekends. Like, they're choosing to go out maybe once a week instead of twice a week. I don't know, but like the weekends being that much busier than they used to be, it seems like something is going on there, and I think a good bit of that is the kind of economic situation. But I think in terms of cost of goods rarely come back down. It's always like, if you watch chicken wings leading up to the Super Bowl, they go up, and they never come back down to what they were, 6 weeks before. They come down a little bit, but they never really come all the way back down. And so I think we just kind of are going to find a little bit of a plateau, but it seems like every time we feel like we've kind of got a handle on it, something like, eggs go up, or something happens somewhere, and there's a huge spike in one of our main ingredients, something, and we've definitely become a little more proactive with that. Like, we've changed menus more often, which has added some creativity too, which is great. But yeah, honestly, it just kind of is what it is now. Like, it's a terrible answer, but
no, I mean, you're right. It's just out of your control for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of menus and changing your menu, I noticed that you all use Pop Menu.
We do, yeah.
which is our podcast sponsor. Nice. And a new partner of ours. And we have a lot of mutual customers, and I've heard a lot of good things about it. I really like what they do. Have you all been working with them for a while?
Yeah, I guess we started maybe 2021.
All of your locations?
Yeah, we don't have the brewery doesn't serve food. We have food trucks and stuff, so I kept that where I'm just managing it. But yeah, all the restaurants are under there, and we use probably like 50% of their capabilities. Like, they have a lot of stuff that we aren't using that maybe either doesn't fit us, or we already kind of had a system and so we haven't switched over. But I really love the more interactive website where people can actually like remind themselves to try a dish, or they can pull up a picture and like it, and it is linked with Facebook and stuff, and so they can do that from our website if they're logged in to their social media or whatever. That's pretty cool. I think that's probably the way everyone's menu will look in a few years. They might just be ahead of the game there, but there is some good marketing tools. We've used it a little bit. Like it has like a text-based thing where we can send something out with, a new beer coming out. We've used it at Tap Station a couple times, or we've had a beer coming out and we've sent a message out to people that, hey, it's Friday, come grab a beer.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. And we've had people coming in saying, hey, I got this and I want to try this new thing. So.
Yeah, I like the fact that the reviews are on the menu and stuff.
Yeah.
It like keeps people from leaving and going to Yelp. I think that's such a cool thing because
Yeah.
I mean you just lose control once they go to Yelp and then whatever. But well, that's cool. Yeah, so kudos, hats off, guys at Pop
Yeah.
Menu. Good company, really good company. And but I did notice when I was looking on your
They
menu,
make a pretty website.
Yeah, because my stepmom was talking about how much she likes your burgers. So literally, like she told me that I was about to leave, and I checked your menu out. I'm like, holy crap! I think that's Pop Menu. But I'll be eating one of those in a couple hours here for sure. Yeah. Anything else on your mind?
No. So we're opening a cocktail bar next to Scratch and Apex. So that's coming
Congrats.
up. So we're excited about that, and then a few other concepts kind of kicking around, but. For the most part, we're ready for a busy summer, hopefully. And winter is always kind of like we just got to get through winter. And luckily, it looks like 70 degrees this week in beginning of February, so that's always nice.
Absolutely. So cocktail bar next to Scratch, and Scratch, you said it's
in
just
Apex, yeah,
right down the street
location,
here.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So that'll be really fun. It's kind of like a lounge environment, and old. Big leather couches, and we've got a menu with like charcuterie boards and butter boards and stuff like that, and then like dessert fondue, and just super social, kind of spend a couple hour hanging out kind of place.
What a good way to do this, bro. I mean, it's so impressive, like smart too. You're just encircling Raleigh. Like you just Raleigh's got a lot going on, but all these little towns with all this growth, and they have character and good communities, and you guys are just plopping down in all of them. I know that was part of your plan early on.
Yeah, well, we live in Holly Springs, so I want to be able to be wherever I need to be in 20 minutes or whatever, and but we also have found that we can make an impact on these small communities and do some give back kind of stuff, and it just feels more genuine to us for whatever reason, and we feel like we have more of a home in the small towns. Not to say we won't ever do something in a city, but I've always just wanted to stick, and maybe it's because I grew up in a small town, but I've always wanted to just kind of focus on these little downtowns that have so much charm and potential, and people are really like loyal to their small town.
Yeah,
they really
that's
are.
exactly right.
And having foot traffic and stuff like that, like it's just, it feels less manufactured to me. It feels more genuine. So.
Well, if you ever get to a point where you're starting to look at other small towns around the state, man, check out Waxhaw.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you down there.
Sounds good.
John, thank you, man. I
Yeah,
appreciate
absolutely.
this. Appreciate the time. Appreciate the business. Appreciate all the great conversation. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. That's a wrap, y'all. More coming soon. See ya.